Most people believe the worker is the engine of progress, the one who toils, who obeys, who performs as expected. But here is the paradox that few dare to speak. It is not the worker, but the one who refuses to remain only a worker, who changes the course of his life and the lives of others. The world salutes diligence, yet rewards those who dare to challenge routine. The worker asks, "What must I do?" The leader asks, "What must be done?" One chases approval, the other creates direction. You were not born to simply fulfill orders left behind by those who came before you. The ladder of success is not climbed by carrying burdens up each rung. It is ascended by questioning whether the ladder is leaning against the right wall at all. Here lies the great irony. The less you cling to the security of being told what to do, the more secure you become in your own vision. To think like a leader is to embrace discomfort, to turn uncertainty into opportunity. If you would rise above the crowd, you must first dare to think differently. Are you ready to challenge the world's oldest assumption? The shift begins in the mind. You entered this world with unshaped will, not pre-written scripts. You did not arrive as a follower. No one is born asking for orders. No one enters life craving permission to think. Yet from your earliest steps, guidance became command. They told you where to walk, how to sit, when to speak, and what to say. You were praised for compliance, rewarded for fitting in, celebrated for coloring within lines others drew long before you arrived. The lesson came early, then deepened with repetition. Safety is found in the familiar, approval in obedience. Quietly, 1,000 invisible hands guided you into formation. And so you learned the rhythm of routine. You followed the path marked by others, completing the assignments, finishing the tasks, playing your part with the hope that diligent performance would someday be enough. You measured worth in tasks completed, boxes checked, hours spent meeting expectations you did not design. This is how most of the world moves through life, not out of laziness, but out of silent training, not out of weakness, but out of habit and expectation. Completion becomes the goal. Transformation is rarely spoken of. Creation is postponed for another day, another life, someone bolder than yourself. Yet somewhere along this path, often in an unremarkable moment, something quietly shifts. It is rarely heralded by applause. No one may notice. But within, it rings like a clear bell. You begin to see that running faster on the same track does not build new worlds. You realize that staying busy, meeting endless deadlines, chasing approval, completing tasks, does not create direction. It only maintains the routine. A subtle awareness dawns. Motion is not meaning. Noise is not purpose. Checking every box is not the same as crafting your own destination. This is the turning point. It begins with a question, usually whispered late at night or in the midst of daily repetition. Why am I doing this? What does it matter? The old question, what must I do, is replaced by a new one. Why does this matter? What am I building? Who will it serve beyond myself? Here, the difference between a worker and a leader is forged not in public, but in the private stillness of your mind. The worker asks, what next? The leader asks, what for? The worker completes the day. The leader considers the direction of a lifetime. Leadership is not appointed by title, nor conferred by applause. It is born in the quiet willingness to take responsibility not only for your actions, but for the impact those actions have. The moment you own not just your effort, but the ripple it creates, you step onto new ground. You begin to think with greater clarity. Strategies and systems matter now, not just routines. You discern the difference between urgent distractions and important missions. You feel the subtle distinction between living under pressure and living with purpose. You notice which actions create movement and which create meaning. And in that inner transformation, The true seed of leadership is planted, not by someone else, not by the world outside you, by you, in the silence where all genuine change begins, where you claim the authority to think differently, to ask why, to design not only your days, but your direction. And it is in this act, quiet, invisible, often uncelebrated, that your life's trajectory begins to change forever. Silence is your strategy. In a world that cannot stop speaking, where every pause is filled with opinion and every silence is seen as a void to be conquered, the rarest strength is restraint. We live among those who equate noise with importance, who rush to fill the air with words before they have measured their meaning. From the marketplace to the boardroom, from gatherings of friends to the halls of power, the loudest often seem to command the most attention. But attention is not the same as authority. Volume is not the same as value. Most move through life as workers trained, perhaps unwittingly, to react rather than reflect. The moment criticism arrives, they defend. The moment a question is asked, they answer, even if the answer has not yet formed in their mind. They explain themselves again and again, as if the world must always be convinced. They spill their precious energy into arguments and explanations, mistaking the exhaustion of effort for the satisfaction of substance. They think that to speak is to be strong, that to react is to be relevant. But true leaders, those who shape destinies, who build legacies that outlast their words, understand a secret that the noisy world forgets. Silence is not weakness. Silence is power, carefully held in reserve. It is the ground from which strategy grows. The leader does not rush to reply. The leader listens, observes, absorbs the current of the room before deciding how to steer it. Their words are few, but each carries the weight of intent. Their silence is not awkwardness, nor is it indecision. It is the discipline of gathering information, of allowing the situation to reveal itself before imposing will upon it. Think of the generals who win wars not by shouting commands across the battlefield, but by watching, waiting, reading the subtle shifts of momentum. Their influence is felt not through the blare of orders, but through the calm confidence of presence. Picture the commander whose mere gaze signals an entire legion to move, whose silence instills both respect and a hint of fear. Consider the rare individual whose composure unsettles those addicted to drama, who makes others uncomfortable not by what is said, but by what is withheld. This is not mere passivity. It is the mastery of the interval between stimulus and response. The worker's attention is scattered, always reaching outward, desperate to be heard, to be seen, to be approved. The leader's focus turns inward. They notice the impulse to react and they restrain it, creating a pocket of stillness in which true judgment can ripen. They do not squander their strength on unnecessary explanations or unearned defenses. They do not waste breath on the unchangeable or the unworthy. To the untrained, silence is emptiness, something to be escaped, something that exposes rather than protects. But to the disciplined mind, silence is a crucible. In its stillness, thoughts settle and separate. Priorities sharpen. Calculations are refined. The leader becomes the master not only of words, but of presence. They command the room not by dominating it, but by anchoring it. If you aspire to lead, begin by valuing the quiet that unsettles the crowd. Recognize that your greatest power lies in the space you hold, not the noise you make. Learn to guard the interval between what the world throws at you and how you choose to answer. For it is in that interval, quiet, overlooked, and fiercely protected, that your clarity, your strategy, and your authority are forged. Replace emotion with evaluation. You cannot think like a leader if your mind is held hostage by every surge of feeling that rises within you. Emotion is not your enemy indeed. It is a vital instrument. But like fire, it must be contained, channeled, and used with intention. Unrestrained, it becomes a force that destroys more than it builds. Most people are not taught this difference. The average worker moves through life ruled by what they feel in the moment, not what they know to be true in the long run. When obstacles appear, the worker's first reaction is emotional. Blame finds a target, panic hijacks reason, complaints fill the air. They flinch at discomfort. They retreat in fear. They let frustration disrupt their focus and anger sabotage their judgment. The leader stands apart not because they do not feel, but because they have learned not to be governed by feelings. Where the worker is swept away by every emotional tide, the leader becomes an anchor. When things go wrong, they do not waste energy on blame or outrage. They do not drown in the story of what should have been. They pause, gather themselves, and interrogate reality. What happened? Why did it happen? What must be done now? This, too, is a discipline often misunderstood. It is not indifference, nor the absence of passion. It is composure, the strength to keep permanent priorities above temporary storms, to rule oneself first before ever seeking to influence others. The leader knows that anger clouds judgment, shrinking the ability to see what truly matters. Fear constricts perspective, making problems seem larger and possibilities smaller. Frustration, unchecked, drains the very momentum needed to overcome. Many believe the lie that every feeling must be expressed to be released. They confuse venting with resolving, reaction with progress. The truth is harsher and far more liberating. You do not need to pour out every emotion to find peace. You must learn to assess, not just express, to pause and question what rises within you, so you may regain command over your own mind. Picture the mind of a true leader as a fortress. Emotions will come: anger, fear, doubt, elation, but they are not handed the keys to the throne room. They may knock at the gate, but entrance is not granted by default. The leader inspects each visitor. What is this feeling? Where does it come from? What belief does it spring from? And does that belief serve the mission or sabotage it? Only when the emotion carries wisdom does it become a guide. All others are politely turned away. To grow into this discipline is not to suppress what you feel. It is to transform. You begin to see your reactions not as weaknesses to be ashamed of, but as signals to be understood. Each feeling is a messenger, bringing news from within. But you are the sovereign who decides what to do with that message. Ask yourself, every time emotion surges, what belief is this feeling tied to? Is that belief advancing my mission, or is it holding me back? How can I convert this energy, anger, fear, excitement into insight, into action, into progress? This is the alchemy of growth. This is how you rise, not by running from your feelings or pretending they do not exist, but by refining them into clarity and fuel. In a noisy world, the crowd chases the loudest voice. But when crisis strikes, when true direction is needed, it is the calmest mind, steady, unshaken, disciplined, that others will trust and follow. The world follows the loud, but it bows to the composed. Don't serve the system, study it. Most people spend their entire lives moving inside a machine whose blueprints they have never seen. They become experts in a single gear, a single lever, a single tiny motion, proud of their efficiency and their mastery over one narrow domain. They know how to keep their part running smoothly, but never stop to question the purpose, the origins, or the flaws of the larger system that holds them. They say, "This is just the way things are." They work, they repeat, they comply. The boundaries of their day are set not by vision, but by habit and expectation. If a problem arises, they patch it, hoping it won't return, crossing their fingers that next week will bring smoother tides. Their eyes are fixed so tightly on their assignment that the greater structure remains invisible. This is the fate of the worker, someone who lives and breathes inside the machinery, tending to symptoms, rarely allowed or encouraged to consider the design itself. They are taught to perfect their process, not to question its necessity. They become keepers of tradition, guardians of routine. But a leader operates from a different elevation. The leader refuses to be trapped within the confines of routine. They understand that if you want to rise, you must rise above, not in pride, but in perspective. You must become a student of the whole, not just a master of the part. So, step back, lift your eyes from your task, observe the entire game being played around you. See the currents of incentive that move people, the patterns that repeat, the rules both spoken and silent that shape outcomes. Pay attention to what is rewarded and what is punished, to the mistakes that recur year after year, built not from individual flaws but from systemic oversight. The worker says, "I hope this problem never happens again." The leader asks, "What is it in the system that allows this problem to exist? How can I ensure it will never happen again, not just for me, but for everyone?" The worker patches leaks. The leader redesigns the plumbing. This is the pivotal difference. Workers deal with symptoms, treating each as an isolated incident. Leaders pursue causes. They study the origin of breakdowns, the roots of inefficiency, the hidden assumptions that shape daily life. And once you begin to see the system for what it truly is, you gain the ability to shape it. You are no longer a servant of the design, but an architect with the power to change it. This is the essence of leadership: to see what others overlook, to question what others accept as given, to challenge the structure, not just survive within it, to notice the invisible architecture of power, tradition, and reward, and, with courage and clarity, to reshape it for the better. Remember, every system you see, every institution, every process, every rule was designed by people no smarter or more capable than yourself. The world you inhabit is not set in stone. It can be examined, it can be improved, it can be rebuilt. So begin by watching with new eyes. Refuse to be hypnotized by routine. Cultivate a mind that is not dulled by repetition, but sharpened by curiosity. Step back, study deeply, and then act not only on your piece, but on the whole. For a leader is not one who simply does their part better. A leader is one who understands the totality, who learns to see, and then dares to design. Own the outcome, not just the effort. Most people are taught from the earliest age to worship effort. The sweat, the struggle, the number of hours clocked, and the hardships endured. "I tried my best" becomes a shield and a salve-proof in their minds that they are worthy, that they deserve praise, even when the result is lacking. In this world, effort is idolized as if it were the same as accomplishment. But the world is not changed by effort alone. The world moves forward because someone delivered a result, because something tangible was achieved. Crops are not harvested by wishing or trying, but by reaping. Bridges are not built by sweat alone, but by the final span holding fast under weight. The world answers to reality, not to intentions. The worker's mind clings to fairness. "I did my part. I put in the time. I followed instructions. What more can be asked of me?" They rehearse their struggle, tally their burdens, and seek consolation in having met the minimum. When the outcome falls short, they point to the process, the late nights, the obstacles, the effort expended, as if that alone should shield them from consequence. But the leader holds a different compass. The leader's mind is relentlessly fixed on responsibility. Did it work? Did it move us forward? Did I solve the problem? They understand that effort is not the destination, it is merely the vehicle. The only thing that matters in the end is where that vehicle arrives. This shift from effort to outcome is a harsh one. It cuts through excuses. It leaves no place to hide. Many resist it their whole lives. For the moment you begin to judge yourself by what actually happens, your comfort in almost and I tried begins to vanish. You must face the result, not the attempt. This is not to say process is meaningless. Process matters, but only in service to outcome. You use process as a tool, not as a trophy. You adapt, refine, and change your approach as many times as necessary until you reach the destination. Process is a means, not an end. When a worker fails, they rehearse the reasons, the conditions, the bad luck and misfortune. When a leader fails, they dissect the event. They interrogate reality. What did I misjudge? Where did I assume? What blind spot did I fail to see? What must change so this failure cannot happen again? Leaders hunger for truth, not for comfort. They refuse to be pacified by easy answers. Owning the outcome is not self-condemnation, it is self-respect. It is the refusal to let yourself off the hook with stories that feel good but leave nothing changed. The leader learns to translate every setback into a new strategy. If I did not influence the result, then I did not truly lead. As you embrace this, your language transforms. I thought someone else was handling it becomes I failed to confirm it was handled. No one told me becomes I did not ask. I tried becomes I will try again, differently until I succeed. You stop narrating your effort and begin engineering your impact. This mindset is heavy. It will make you stand out. Others may say you are too hard on yourself, too demanding, too unrelenting. But they do not carry the responsibility you have chosen. You are no longer content with touching the process. You are responsible for the outcome. As you live this way, something powerful happens. People begin to trust you, not because you claim perfection, but because you do not vanish when things go wrong. You do not hide behind process. You face the consequence, take the blow, and say, I am accountable, let's fix it. This is when your influence becomes real, not because you speak more, but because you have shown that your words are backed by action and results. Effort is admirable, but outcome is leadership. Decide what you want your life to be measured by. See people as patterns, not problems. Most workers move through their days judging people by whether they make life easier or harder. Each colleague, customer, or stranger is cast in a simple role. Either they are an obstacle to be maneuvered around, or a helper to be enlisted in getting the job done. Frustration grows with every baffling behavior, every decision that seems illogical, every outburst of emotion that derails a plan. People, in the worker's mind, are a complication to be managed, problems to endure, not patterns to understand. But a leader cannot afford that blindness. If you aspire to rise above the worker's mentality, you must become a dedicated student of human nature. Leadership begins with a simple but profound shift, the willingness to see beneath the surface. Beneath the quick temper, the stubborn silence, the restless ambition, the contagious enthusiasm, there are patterns. Every word, every reaction, every silence is a clue to the forces that move a person. Leaders train themselves to observe these currents with curiosity, not frustration. The worker's question is always personal. Why are they acting like this to me? The leader's question is clinical, almost scientific. What does this behavior reveal about the person, about the environment, about the deeper pattern at play? Start to look beyond immediate words and moods. Ask yourself, What drives this person beneath the surface? Fear, pride, ambition, insecurity, fatigue, loyalty, all these currents shape human action. Some people shrink from responsibility when the spotlight hits them, while others quietly seek it. Some cling fiercely to recognition, while others deflect credit. Some require constant reassurance, others only need clear direction. This approach is not about becoming cynical or manipulative, it's about precision. You are not dismissing the complexity of human emotion. You are honoring it, seeking to map it, to work with it, rather than fight against it. Where a worker reacts to every slight, every harsh tone, every disagreement as a personal wound, a leader remains calm, asking, "What does this reveal about the situation? What's the real need or threat underneath this behavior? How can I work with it instead of against it?" You begin to listen differently. When someone complains, you hear the fear or disappointment that shapes their words. When someone brags, you sense the insecurity that drives the boast. When you encounter resistance to change, you spot the anxiety about losing status, comfort, or identity. Every action is a signal, every emotion a signpost, every conflict an opportunity to see more deeply. With this understanding, your influence begins to deepen. You stop wasting energy trying to force cooperation through pressure or persuasion alone. Instead, you begin to earn trust through insight. You speak to people's motives, not just their behaviors. You frame your decisions in language that connects with what truly matters to them. You place people where their strengths match the mission, rather than resenting their weaknesses or wishing they were more like you. The worker says, "Why can't they think and act like I do?" The leader asks, "Who are they really, and how can I shape, guide, or channel that toward the larger goal?" This lens must also turn inward. With the same honesty and curiosity, you observe your own patterns where you avoid confrontation to keep the peace, where you overcommit to be liked, where you hesitate out of fear of being wrong, where pride masquerades as principle. By understanding yourself as another human subject to these same patterns, you gain the power to refine your actions and reactions. Leadership is built on this twin awareness. You are dealing with humans, not machines, and that includes yourself. The more clearly you see these patterns, the less you are thrown by the unexpected. The less surprised you are, the calmer and more decisive you become. Workers live in a state of perpetual shock, always blindsided by the unpredictable. Leaders are rarely surprised because they have taken the time to study the predictable in human behavior. Do not resent people for being human. Observe, learn, and use your understanding to build something wiser than frustration. That is how you rise above managing tasks and begin leading minds. Raise your standards, shrink your circle. You cannot expect to think like a leader if you are content to live at the standards of the crowd. The truth is, most people organize their lives around comfort and consensus. The worker's daily questions revolve around belonging. Is everyone else doing this? Will they notice if I don't? Will I stand out if I choose differently? Decisions are weighed against the shifting expectations of those nearby. Fitting in becomes the measure of success. Their choices are crafted not by conviction, but by consensus, blending into the middle, never venturing too far from the average. But the average is where dreams go to sleep. Leadership never rises on averages. Leaders rise on standard. A standard is a silent contract you make with yourself. It is the invisible line below which you refuse to step no matter who is watching, no matter who is with you, no matter how much it costs. It's the quality you will not compromise, the promise you will not break, the discipline you will not abandon, even when no one else is holding you to account. standards are personal, precise, and often lonely. They are not dictated by the crowd, but by the clarity of your own vision. The moment you raise your standards, life begins to shift. The change is rarely dramatic at first, but it is always unmistakable. You begin to feel discomfort in places where you once felt at home. You no longer tolerate the shortcuts that you once excused. The jokes that once amused you, the gossip that once distracted you, the small betrayals of integrity that once seemed harmless, now they leave a bitter taste. You become restless around cynicism. Solutions attract you. Excuses repel you. The rooms you used to enjoy suddenly feel stifling. And as your standards rise, your circle will almost certainly shrink. Those who were comfortable with the old you will notice the change, and not all will celebrate it. They may accuse you of being too rigid, too serious, too proud. You will hear, "You've changed," spoken as an indictment, not a compliment. And you will realize they are right. You have changed. You are no longer willing to live at the level of their comfort. You have stopped betraying your own potential to preserve their approval. This loss is what the worker fears most. The desire to belong is strong, and the pain of outgrowing old companions can be sharp. But the leader accepts this shrinking as the necessary price of genuine growth. The crowd clings to comfort in numbers. The leader seeks alignment with purpose, even if it means walking alone for a season. Do not expect to think like a leader while you still spend your time with those who mock discipline and glorify distraction. Do not expect to see clearly if you surround yourself with those who never question their own habits. Do not expect to act with courage if you are bound to those who flee from every discomfort. You don't need to denounce them or declare yourself superior. There is no need for drama or division. Simply step away with dignity, with humility, and with resolve. Let your life be pulled by a different gravity. Seek out those whose very presence raises your standards. Find the people whose habits expose your excuses. Let the discipline of others humble you, not harden you. Let their excellence sting you into growth, not shame you into retreat. Remember, you become what you repeatedly tolerate from yourself and from those you allow closest to you. If you accept laziness, you betray your own promise. If you condone gossip, you undermine your own influence. If you tolerate dishonesty, you corrode your own authority. Raise your standards, even if nobody notices. Shrink your circle, even if nobody understands. For leadership begins to crystallize the moment you choose integrity over popularity, vision over comfort, and purpose over acceptance. In the end, the crowd seeks comfort in numbers. The leader seeks clarity of conscience and alignment with a higher aim, even if it means fewer companions along the way. Build structures that do not depend on you. Most workers spend their careers striving to be indispensable. They dream of being the person the whole system depends on, the hero who swoops in to fix the crisis, the irreplaceable cornerstone, the one everyone looks to when things begin to unravel. There is a certain pride in this, the thrill of being needed, the flattery of constant requests, the sense that without your presence, nothing could function. But what feels like power is, in truth, a subtle prison. If the world falls apart every time you step away, you are not leading. You are simply holding the pieces together by force of will, and the cost is your exhaustion. You are not building, you are patching. Your value becomes a chain, and your absence becomes the system's collapse. A leader, on the other hand, sets their sights on something higher and far more liberating. The leader is always asking, how do I create something that thrives in my absence? How do I design this process, this team, this system, so that it functions without my constant oversight? How do I build not just for today, but for a time when I am no longer here? This is the essence of stewardship, not control. Control whispers, "Nothing moves without me." It basks in the short-lived glory of being essential. Stewardship declares, "I will design this so it moves rightly even when I am gone." It takes pride not in the spotlight, but in the system's strength and self-sufficiency. To truly think like a leader, you must develop the habit of building systems instead of simply solving problems. Every time you find yourself fixing the same issue for the 3rd or 30th time, it is not a sign of your unique value, it is a signal that the system is weak where it should be strong. The leader pauses and asks hard questions. Why does this keep happening? What is missing from our process, our training, or our structure that allows this problem to recur? What can I put in place, a procedure, a tool, a checklist, a conversation, so that this challenge is resolved automatically without me at the center? This could mean documenting knowledge you once kept in your head. It could mean developing sharper training so others are equipped to act. It might require creating a tool or refining a process, or even having a difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Whatever the solution, you invest the time and thought once, so you do not have to rescue it forever. This mindset will challenge your ego. It will reveal how much of your self-worth has been bound up in being needed, in being the firefighter and the fixer. You may feel the sting of watching others perform tasks you once guarded, perhaps even better than you did, with greater independence and less dependence on your direction. Let that discomfort purify your ambition. Let it remind you, your worth is not in being the one who always can, but in creating something that works, grows, and lasts when you are no longer around. The worker clings to tasks. The leader rises to architecture. Brick by brick, you turn knowledge into systems, tasks into training, habits into rituals. You empower others to carry responsibility. You lay foundations so that others can build higher than you alone ever could. Inevitably, the day will come when you must step away, whether by choice, by necessity, or by the passage of time. When that day arrives, your true measure as a leader will be revealed. If all you built collapses without you, then you were a worker with a wide reach but little legacy. If what you build endures, strengthens, and grows beyond your involvement, then you were a leader who chose to build a legacy, not a spotlight. Leadership is not about being the linchpin that holds things together. It is about being the architect whose vision lives on. Build structures that do not depend on your constant touch. That is how you move from being the center of the machine to being the mind that designed it, and that is the only path to true legacy. Think in trade-offs, not wishes. The worker's mind is ruled by wishes. I want more time, more freedom, more reward, more recognition. The wish list is endless, always hoping for a life that grows wider, richer, easier, but somehow never demands a cost in return. There is a longing to gain without giving, to collect every good thing while never closing a single door. At the heart of this is a quiet illusion that with enough luck, with the right break, you can have it all without ever having to make a true sacrifice. The leader's mind is built in a furnace far less forgiving. The leader understands that life is shaped by trade-offs, not wishes. For every door you walk through, 10 others close behind you. Every yes you speak is a silent no to something else. Priorities are not free. They cost attention, energy, and sometimes even relationships. The leader does not flinch at this reality. They recognize it as the ground truth of all real accomplishment. You cannot lead without disappointing someone, including yourself. Most people fight this truth. They try to keep everyone happy, to juggle every role, to say yes to every request. They fear being misunderstood, fear missing out, fear letting someone down. But in their frantic avoidance of loss, they scatter their strength in 1,000 directions. Their days become diluted, their progress faint. The dream is there, but the force behind it is always divided. Leaders are willing to bear the discomfort others flee. They ask themselves the questions that most avoid. What truly matters, not just today, but in the long run? What am I willing to sacrifice to protect what matters most? What am I no longer willing to give up, even if it costs me approval or comfort? They sit with the reality that focus has a price. Every gain brings a loss. When you choose depth, you must forfeit breadth. When you pursue excellence, you must sacrifice the comfort of average. To stand for something, you must let go of belonging everywhere. You will lose leisure. You will lose the soft blanket of universal approval. You will lose the comfort of never being questioned or doubted. These are not failures. They are the natural byproducts of deciding on purpose instead of drifting by accident. The worker complains, "I don't have enough time." The leader answers, "I traded my time for things that mattered less." This is not self-blame, it is radical clarity. And from clarity, power is born. Once you accept trade-offs as the operating principle of life, your mind shifts from drifting to deciding. You become far more intentional about where your time, your energy, and your focus go. You do not accept every invitation, every offer, every emotion that demands your attention. You ask, if I give this my energy, what am I weakening elsewhere? If I feed this habit, what future am I starving? You begin to see that every yes to a distraction is a no to mastery. Every yes to the comfort of the moment is a no to the strength you could build for tomorrow. Every yes to a pleasing lie is a no to the bracing truth that could set you free. This way of thinking will cut through your life like a blade. You will see, sometimes painfully, where your days have been quietly stolen by things unworthy of your sacrifice. You will recognize that even when you were not choosing, you were trading just without intention. Leaders choose their sacrifices. Workers stumble into theirs. To lead is to grow beyond the childish wish to have it all at once and to step into the adult's wisdom. You can have many good things in life, but not all at the same time and not all at the highest level. So you begin to choose depth over scattered curiosity, excellence over convenience, a handful of meaningful relationships over a crowd of shallow ones, a mission worth suffering for over a life spent avoiding pain. When you start thinking in trade-offs, your days cease to be accidents. They become deliberate investments. And that is how the gap widens. The worker always swept by the next urgency. The leader building steadily from priority to priority, from intention to impact. Walk toward the fire. Leadership is not a path paved with comfort. It will demand that you step forward when most turn away, to stand firm in the heat when others scatter for shade. The natural instinct of the worker is simple. Avoid discomfort. Avoid conflict. Keep your head down and hope that tempests pass without your involvement. Their guiding thought is, why risk exposure? Why make myself a target? Let someone else handle the difficult things. And so, the hardest problems remain unaddressed. They fester in darkness, grow in silence, and eventually become embedded in the very culture, the invisible architecture of every failing organization, every struggling team, every stagnant life. But leaders are forged in fire, not comfort. Where most retreat, leaders advance calmly, deliberately, without bravado, but with unwavering resolve. To lead is to recognize that some challenges, some failures, some truths will never resolve themselves. They demand confrontation, and so you walk toward them, even when your own heart thuds with anxiety, even when every instinct whispers for safety. Leadership is rarely dramatic in its bravery. There is no fanfare, no dramatic music, just the quiet courage to face what everyone else ignores. Sometimes it means confronting a truth others are avoiding, naming a failure that has been papered over, having a conversation that has been postponed far too long. You will feel the churn of nerves, the rise of doubt, the urge to sidestep the discomfort. Old scripts will play in your mind. Let it go. Someone else will take care of it. What if this ruins the peace? What if I become the villain in someone else's story? But you know this. If you spend your life waiting for others to act, you are not leading. You are simply hiding, blending into the scenery of mediocrity. Walking toward the fire does not mean charging into battle, attacking, or blaming. True leadership is about refusing to let fear write your story. It is about stating reality clearly, without venom or ego. You name what is true, describe the cost of inaction, and propose a path forward, however incomplete. Sometimes you will be the only one standing in that uncomfortable light, while others watch from a safe distance, relieved it is not their turn. Do not resent them. They were never shown how to do this. You are teaching yourself now, one hard step at a time. But the most dangerous fire is not always outside you. Often it burns within. Leaders must turn toward the flames inside their own character, the uncomfortable corners, the rationalizations, the clever stories that hide uncomfortable truths. You must confront yourself with the same honesty you demand from others. Where am I failing to be honest with myself? What am I clinging to? My comfort, my ego, my old story at the expense of the mission or the greater good? What habits or excuses are shaping a future I would never choose if only I saw it clearly? Leadership is not a road of uninterrupted calm. It is the road of chosen confrontations again and again with reality, with fear, with the limits of your own courage. The worker will always prefer peace at any price, even if it means trading progress for comfort. The leader knows that real progress sometimes demands the temporary loss of harmony, that true growth is born from honest struggle. You will not always be appreciated for this. There will be times when you are misunderstood, opposed, or even resented. That is the nature of leadership. But time is a fair judge. In the end, those who value truth and strength will remember you as the one who had the courage to stand firm when it mattered most. They will know that when the fire came, you did not vanish into the shadows. For the fire you face today burns away illusion and forges the steel you will need for every challenge tomorrow. Live for a mission bigger than yourself. There comes a point where mastery of technique, discipline, and strategy, no matter how refined, reaches its natural limit. You may know how to manage tasks with precision, guide people with empathy, master your own emotions, and think in systems and trade-offs. You may become exceptionally effective, even admired, but sooner or later, you will sense that something is missing. An emptiness echoes behind the achievements, a subtle hollowness at the heart of effort. All the tools, all the habits, all the tactical victories become, in the end, just motions unless they are fastened to something deeper. This is the quiet truth. Leaders are not sustained by ambition alone. Ambition fuels the start, but it cannot carry you through the weight of the journey. True leadership is held aloft by mission, by a purpose that stretches far beyond your own comfort, beyond your own lifespan, beyond anything your own hands alone can complete. The worker's horizon remains small, close, and safe. A reliable salary, a respectable title, a sense of security, a little recognition. These things are not evil, nor are they unworthy, but they are too slight to bear the weight of a human soul. When your life is built only around what you can acquire, protect, or display, fatigue eventually overwhelms you. The daily burdens become heavier, the sacrifices more bitter, the inevitable conflicts seem increasingly pointless. The soul asks, again and again, for what am I trading all of this? You need a cause that justifies the cost. You need a mission that lifts your eyes beyond the boundaries of your own gain. A mission is not a slogan, not a motivational catchphrase to be recited at meetings. It is a direction, an ordering principle that shapes your decisions at every fork in the road. It answers the foundational questions. Why does this work matter, even on the hardest days? Who is quietly lifted by what I do, whether or not they ever thank me? What kind of world am I, through my choices and standards, helping to build or undermine? What will remain, long after my name is forgotten? When you begin to anchor your life in these questions, your leadership acquires a new gravity. Difficulty endures differently when you can see who benefits on the other side of your struggle. Injustice strikes you differently when you recognize the example you are setting for those who follow. Sacrifice is accepted more calmly when you understand the invisible structure it supports. The worker asks, "What do I get?" The leader asks, "What do I build? What do I leave behind?" Grand speeches or sweeping platforms are not required. Mission begins in the small, often unseen circles of your daily life. Perhaps your mission is to create a place where people experience a justice they never knew elsewhere. Perhaps it is to prove that excellence and kindness can coexist in work. Perhaps it is to raise a standard of integrity so infectious that everyone it touches is quietly changed. Perhaps it is to lift the next generation so they begin where you once struggled to arrive. Whatever your mission, let it reach beyond your ego. When you live for something larger, rejection loses its sting, failure becomes feedback instead of condemnation, and success becomes stewardship instead of self-congratulation. You are no longer the center, you are a servant of something greater. And here, the great paradox of leadership appears. The more you live beyond yourself, the more grounded you become within yourself. The more you give to a cause that outlives you, the less you fear what is lost along the way. Workers chase a sense of importance. Leaders quietly accept the burden of responsibility. Ask yourself in your most honest moments, what am I willing to give years of my life to, even when no one applauds? What am I willing to suffer for, grow for, learn for? Build your days around that answer. Let it guide your standards, your courage, your silence, your choices. For in the end, leadership is not about standing above others, but standing before them bearing a vision, a standard, and a mission they could not see alone. That is how you stop being merely a worker in the machinery of the world and become a designer of its future. Discipline over drama. The worker spends their days hunting for motivation. They search for the spark, the surge of energy, the lightning bolt of inspiration that makes action effortless. They tell themselves they'll begin when they feel ready, when the mood is right, when excitement returns. They start with a burst, fueled by the thrill of something new, but the moment momentum fades, as it inevitably does, they stall, they spiral. They wait for the cycle to repeat. Life becomes a series of restarts, each one louder and more desperate than the last. The leader takes a different path. The leader understands that motivation is fickle, undependable, a fair-weather friend that cannot be trusted to show up when most needed. Instead, the leader builds life on discipline. They do not ask their feelings for permission to move. They do not sit idly, hoping for the inner weather to change before taking the next step. They move deliberately, consistently anchored to a mission that is not tied to mood. This is the unglamorous truth. The world is crowded with talented, passionate people who go nowhere. Not because they lack ability, but because they are slaves to how they feel. They pursue the next high, the next surge of excitement, trading lasting growth for the fleeting jolt of stimulation. They are addicted to drama, the rush of starting, the spectacle of struggling, the story of beginning again and again. But drama is only noise. It is the soundtrack of the undisciplined, the endless distraction that keeps a person busy but never changed. Every time you complain, vent, over-explain, or justify your lack of action, you strengthen this cycle. You feed the side of yourself that craves escape, not excellence. The need for release becomes stronger than the desire for responsibility. You become a master at telling stories, but a novice at finishing them. The leader sees through the temptation. The leader chooses the quiet grind over the loud spiral. They are not impressed by the bright burn of passion that vanishes at the first sign of resistance. They respect the steady flame, the quiet, unshakable resolve that remains lit day after day, especially when no one is watching. Ask yourself, do you want to be swept away by every wave of feeling, or do you want to become the one who builds a vessel that can sail through storms? Do you want to be someone who needs hype to act, or someone who acts regardless of the atmosphere? Will you settle for the rush of starting over, or seek the deep satisfaction that comes from relentless follow-through? Discipline rarely looks impressive on the surface. In a world hooked on dopamine, it is the rarest and most valuable form of power. It is what allows you to execute when others hesitate. It is what lets you finish what others abandon. It is the true mark of leadership, not in what you say, but in what you do, consistently, when no one is there to notice. The worker endlessly searches for life hacks and shortcuts, always hoping for an easier way. The leader sharpens habits, understanding that greatness is found not in flashes of brilliance, but in the accumulation of small, right actions over time. This is the long game. It is not a sprint of intense bursts, but a lifetime of steady alignment. Discipline is not a punishment. It is a freedom earned, an internal structure that carries you forward when emotion fails and excitement runs dry. It is the invisible architecture that lets you lead, quietly, persistently, and powerfully. So let go of the myth that motivation is the fuel. Build discipline instead. One day, you will look up, far ahead of where you began, wondering how you ever believed feeling was the force you needed. In the end, it is discipline that changes the trajectory not just of your life, but of everyone who follows your example. Be the calm in the chaos. There is always a moment in every storm when the room is thick with tension, plans have unraveled, and panic is spreading like wildfire when people scan their surroundings, desperate to find someone who isn't unraveling. In crisis, it is rarely the loudest or the cleverest who command respect. It is the calmest. People look to a leader not for their technical knowledge or their past accomplishments, but for the nerve to stand still in chaos. And what they are searching for is not silence born of fear, nor stillness frozen by shock. It is the rare and undeniable calm that comes from inner structure. The worker, in these moments, reacts as everyone else does. They become part of the noise. They let the stress infect their words and the urgency shorten their breath. They match the pace of panic, thinking that to move faster is to solve faster, when all they're really doing is multiplying confusion. But the leader slows down, not because they're immune to pressure, but because they have trained themselves to process it differently. Leaders have learned that frantic decisions breed more chaos. They understand that emotional flinching only invites more mistakes. They know that urgency is not an excuse for recklessness, but a signal to sharpen their clarity. In any true crisis, you do not rise to the level of your intention, you fall to the level of your preparation. Calm is not luck. Calm is built day by day, in the quiet mornings before the world awakens, in the hard conversations where you choose truth over convenience, and in the small routines that anchor you before the winds pick up. Calm is not the illusion of control over all things. It is mastery of yourself when nothing else seems steady. You must teach your nervous system that discomfort is not danger. You must retrain your reflexes so that stress becomes a cue to slow your breath, to listen longer, to respond later rather than sooner. When you feel the urge to interrupt, resist. When you sense fear tightening your gut, name it but do not obey it. When insult stirs up anger, examine the trigger but never hand over your power. Every environment you enter is filled with emotional debris. People bring their anxiety, their insecurities, their secret fears, hoping someone else will absorb them. Let them bring it. You bring stillness. Let others rush to speak. You listen. Let others grasp for the spotlight. You observe. Because in the end, the person who is loudest may win attention for a moment, but the calmest wins respect for a lifetime. The leader is the anchor in the storm, not because they control the waves, but because they always remember where the shore is. Be that calm, especially when no one else can. That is the moment you rise. Choose legacy over image. The final line separating a worker from a leader is subtle, but it divides the temporary from the timeless. The worker lives for image. The leader lives for legacy. Image is about today, about being noticed, applauded, approved of, envied. The worker obsesses over how they appear, carefully tailoring every word and gesture to court the applause of the moment. Their compass is always external. Did I impress them? Did I fit in? Did I get my share of recognition? Their choices become a performance, measured by reaction, not by result. The leader sees farther. They ask, what am I building with this decision? What will this standard protect? Not just for me, but for everyone who comes after me. What sort of culture am I creating by my example? Leaders willingly accept the pain of disappointing today's expectations in order to lay the foundation for something worthy tomorrow. They know applause is fleeting, that praise is fickle, that public recognition comes and goes. But what you build, the standards you uphold, the people you elevate, the values you defend, these echo on long after you're gone. Legacy is what remains when your name is forgotten but your impact continues. This is the silent burden of leadership. You don't live for likes, you live for alignment. You don't bend your convictions to fit the trend. You become the steady reference point around which others can find true north. Yes, it will cost you. You will be misunderstood. You may be ignored or doubted by those who only care about the show. Let them. Because in the long view, what is built in silence outlasts what is built in the spotlight. Legacy is not shaped by grand gestures. It's measured in how you treat those who have nothing to offer you, how you handle power when no one is watching, and whether your presence lifted the standards or lowered them. Workers chase attention. Leaders build foundations. One fades with the fashion, the other becomes the reason others can stand tall tomorrow. So ask yourself daily, what am I building with this choice? What standard am I setting, even in the smallest things? What will endure when I am gone? If you can answer those questions honestly, you're no longer just working in the world, you're shaping it. That is what it means to lead. That is how you become unforgettable, not because they remember your name, but because they stand stronger on the ground you prepared. Finish your work, not for the image, but for the legacy. That is the ultimate work.